I remember the sound first, the clinking of silverware, the scrape of knives against porcelain, and then the laughter, not the kind of laughter that warms a room, the kind that slices you open, the kind that tells you, you don't belong here. I sat at the end of that long wooden dining table, the one my grandfather carved by hand. Candles flickered. Plates of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, gravy, and fresh bread filled the table. It smelled like home. It should have felt like home. But that night, home turned into a battlefield. My cousin leaned back in his chair, smirking, and said it loud enough for everyone to hear. "Man, she's like the ugly duckling of the family, isn't she?" Silence. Then an eruption of chuckles, snorts, even a wheeze from my uncle at the far end. I froze. My fork hovered above my plate. My face burned hot, but my hands were ice. I wanted to disappear into the wood grain of that table, to melt into the floorboards. Ugly duckling! The words spread like wildfire, whispered, repeated, giggled. My aunt covered her mouth as if that made it less cruel. My brother shook his head and muttered, "Don't be mean." But even he didn't look at me. I felt every pair of eyes, every grin. And then my mother, she didn't defend me. She didn't stop them. She just let out a sigh, a tired little sigh, and said, "Don't be cruel. She'll grow into her looks." Hopefully, my chest caved in. I don't even remember the taste of the food after that. Just the sound of their laughter echoing inside me. That was the night they branded me. The ugly duckling. And I knew something in me had cracked. But here's the thing. They didn't know me. Not really. And they had no idea what was coming. Because sometimes the ugly duckling grows teeth. And the craziest part? That dinner wasn't even the worst betrayal of the night. After the laughter, after the knives and the whispers, I fled. Not dramatically. No slammed doors or shouting. I stood up so slowly my legs felt foreign. I pushed my chair back and the wood screamed against the floor, loud enough to make my cousin look up for the first time. He smiled like a shark. My mother barely blinked. My plate was half-eaten. The gravy had congealed around the edges. I left it. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and old perfume. The house held on to the night's heat. My breath came out in small white ghosts. I passed the framed family photos. My face looked the same in each one. Small, awkward, a smile forced for the camera. The frames caught the candlelight and threw it back like judgment. I locked myself in the bathroom because there was nowhere else to go. The mirror showed me everything I already knew. Cheeks I hated. A nose I'd measured with cruel eyes that had learned to look down. I turned the tap on until the water warmed. I let it run over my hands and watched the ripples. I pressed my forehead to the cool tile and let my knees fold in. I cried without sound, because the walls were thin and I couldn't afford the curtain call of drama. I didn't want anyone to come in and hand me that one pitying look people give to broken things. "Are you okay?" My brother's voice from the other side asked, muffled. He spoke like men who don't want to be involved. He'd said okay before. He didn't mean it. "Fine," I lied. It was the kind of lie that felt like swallowing glass. I listened. Their voices faded down the hall, murmured plans for leftovers, talk about politics, an easy disinterest in cruelty. They moved on. They always moved on. I did not move. Instead, I packed a bag. Not like in the movies. No dramatic suitcase. A small backpack, my laptop. A change of clothes. My journal with the crooked handwriting I'd kept since I was 12. A lipstick I rarely used. I took my keys and the thrift store scarf I had bought for $10 last winter. I left my phone on the counter so I wouldn't hear their messages promising to talk tomorrow. Outside, the night smelled different. It smelled honest. The air was sharp with the late hour and a distant sweetness of rain that hadn't yet fallen. Streetlights stood like sentinels. Cars made slow, tired passes. The city was quieter than the house had been. No one called me names on the pavement. I walked until my legs burned. I walked until the neat rows of houses gave way to apartment blocks with laundry hanging like flags. My feet found a bench in a small park that had seen better days. The bench was cold. The wood left a line on my skin. I opened my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor until it felt like a heartbeat. I typed nothing. I scrolled through old photos instead. There was a picture from when I was 8, freckles across the bridge of my nose, hair a mess, eyes full of mud and pride. I remembered how I had loved that day. Imagine that. A version of me who loved herself before words taught her to hate. Everyone else gets to stay where they are, I whispered to myself. Why do I have to be the one who's a mess? A woman sat down 2 benches over. She smelled like coffee and something floral. She was sharp in a way that made me uncomfortable. Hair pinned back, a leather jacket that had clearly been expensive enough to make a statement. She pulled out her phone and typed, then glanced at me like she'd stumbled on a scene in a play. "You okay?" she called. Not pity, curiosity. I wanted to say no. I wanted to shout about the family table and knives and names. But instead I said, "I will be," she laughed. "Not cruel." A short, surprised laugh. "That's not an answer," she said, standing up and walking over. Up close, her eyes were something like a blunt instrument, practical seeing. She held out her hand. Her nails were short, work-hardened. "Name's Mara," she said. "Photographer." "Right," I said, because that was a word people throw out to sound important. She kept her hand extended. She didn't look like those glossy, kind strangers you meet in inspirational posts. She looked like someone who'd watched people and learned how to find the lines that mattered. She tilted her head, examining my face the way you might examine a painting. Not with cruelty, with calculation. "You have a face that tells a story," she said. "Not an easy face." "A real one." She clicked her phone. "Do you have time on Monday?" "I'm looking for people for a project, none of the usual models." "I want raw." My chest did a small stupid thing. A laugh that could have been a sob got stuck somewhere behind my teeth. "No," I said, because the right thing to do was to be cautious. The wrong thing was to take anything handed without earning it. She didn't push. She slid a business card across the bench like it was a secret, like it was something dangerous to pass. The card made contact with the palm of my hand and the paper felt like a small ocean. On it was a name, a studio, a number, and a tiny typed phrase, "We celebrate the real." I looked up to tell her thank you. She had already walked away, melting into the night like a person with purpose. My heart beat irregularly. The card lay in my palm like a promise, or a trap. I put it in my bag. I didn't plan to call. I didn't plan to be the person who answered the phone. But the truth was this. For the first time that night, something like possibility clicked into place. Not a plan, not yet, but a thread. A single thin red thread through my chest that tugged. I thought about the faces at my family table, the way they'd laughed and moved on. I thought about the mirror and the tile, and the feeling of being overlooked even by love. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. A screenshot of a comment from earlier that day. Someone at the dinner had posted a video. The caption read, "Before, just wait till you see the glow up." My hands went cold. Who sent it? Why did someone on the internet have footage of us at that table? And what did they mean by glow up? I was about to delete the message when the unknown number replied, "Come to 7th and Main tomorrow, midnight." I stared at the words like they were a dare. My mouth was dry. A voice inside me whispered, "This could be a trap." Another voice answered, "Or this could be the first right thing anyone's offered." I looked down at Mara's business card, then at the message. The night held its breath. What do you do when the only doors open are the ones you didn't plan to knock on? I almost threw the card away. Instead, I answered the unknown number with 3 words. "Who is this?" The reply came faster than I expected, and it wasn't what I feared. Not seconds, milliseconds. Like whoever sat on the other side had been waiting, staring at the screen, hungry. It said, "Someone who knows what they said about you tonight." My blood turned electric. The phone slipped in my hand. I looked around like maybe the night itself was watching me. Who? Who could possibly have been at that table then slipped out into the dark to send this? Family? A friend? A stranger in the walls? I typed, "Why?" My thumb hovered. The dots appeared. "Because you don't know the half of it." I swear my heart skipped. I wanted to throw the phone. Instead, I sat frozen on that park bench while the city moved. Tires on wet asphalt, dogs barking behind fences, a plane cutting across the sky. And me, anchored by a glowing screen. My family's laughter replayed like a broken cassette. Ugly duckling. My mother's sigh. The word hopefully, and now, someone else out there saying there was more. I should have blocked the number. I should have deleted everything. Instead, I typed back, "What do you mean?" They didn't explain. They sent a photo, my throat locked. It was me, sitting at that dining table earlier that night. Not a wide shot. Not a group photo. Just me, head tilted, eyes down, hands limp on the fork, taken from the corner of the room, angle perfect, as if someone wanted to frame me not as family, but as a specimen. I whispered out loud. No one was standing there. How? The next text buzzed. You think it started tonight? My chest went hollow. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Instead, I tucked the phone away, shoved the card Mara had given me deeper into my bag, and walked until my legs were bruised with distance. But you can't walk away from words. You can't walk away from the echo of a phone buzzing in your pocket like a second heartbeat. By dawn, I hadn't slept. My skin smelled like iron and nerves. I sat in my apartment's kitchen, staring at peeling linoleum tiles. The blinds threw long prison bars of light across the table. The phone lit up again. Same number. One line this time. Midnight. Don't be late, I wanted to scream. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the microwave door. Eyes red, hair tangled. But something else glimmered. A thread of rage. A dangerous thread that whispered, maybe it's time you stop being the one who swallows everything. By 10 a.m., Mara called. Her voice was like gravel dipped in honey. You think about my offer? She asked. I nearly told her no. Nearly said I was too busy, too broken, too ugly duckling. But what slipped out instead was, where's your studio? Silence on her end. Then, I like you, she said. You've got fight. Come by Tuesday noon, and just like that I had 2 doors. One labeled midnight, the other labeled Tuesday. Both dangerous. Both promising something sharp. I held the phone in my palm and realized something. The people who had mocked me, the ones who had branded me with their laughter, had no idea what storms were aligning behind the curtain. But I did. And I was starting to wonder, what if I let the storm out? The next night I showed up at 7th and Main, midnight. The place wasn't what I expected. Not even close. I told myself I wasn't going to go. I swore it. But the closer the clock crawled toward midnight, the louder the buzzing inside me became. It wasn't the phone. It was my own veins screaming. At 11:45, I put on the scarf, pulled my hood tight, and stepped out. The streets looked different at night. Street lamps flickered like broken stars. The air smelled of rust and rain. My footsteps echoed too loudly, each one accusing me. Coward, coward, coward. 7th and Main wasn't a glamorous corner. It was cracked concrete, a dead streetlight, a shuttered pawn shop with a neon sign that had lost half its letters. A place where secrets belonged. I checked my phone. No new message. No instructions. Just that one line from before. Midnight. Don't be late. At 11:59, my stomach dropped. At 12:00, the air shifted. A car pulled up. Not sleek. Not expensive. A beat-up sedan with one headlight fogged over. The driver's window rolled down halfway. You're early, a voice said. Male. Older than me. Not young enough to hide the wear in it. I froze. My hand twitched toward my phone. Relax, he said. You're safe here. For now. Safe. The most dangerous word in the English language. Who are you? I demanded. He chuckled. Not kindly. The one who knows what your family really says when you leave the room? My skin prickled. You were there? He didn't answer that. Instead, he slid something across the dashboard and held it out through the window. A folder, thick. Go on, he said. Take it. I hesitated. My heart was a war drum. But my hand moved anyway, trembling, pulling the folder close. Inside, photos. Dozens. Not just from last night. From birthdays, vacations, Random Tuesdays, me, always me. Never smiling right. Always framed like I was a punchline, and then words. Printed screenshots. Group chats. Messenger threads. My name highlighted. Lines like knives. She'll never get married looking like that. God, imagine her in 10 years. Yikes. Poor thing. Some people are just born wrong. My own blood. My own family. Every cruel thought spilled onto a screen. I couldn't breathe. The papers shook in my hands. "Why are you showing me this?" I whispered. The man leaned closer. His eyes were shadowed, unreadable. "Because I think you deserve to know the truth. And because I think you're ready." Ready for what? He didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a card. Not Mara's elegant kind. A cheap one. Plain white. On it, scrawled in messy black ink, "Tomorrow night. Same place, if you want answers." And then he drove away, tail lights bleeding into the night, leaving me with the folder pressed to my chest like a coffin lid. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn every photo. But I didn't. I carried it home. I spread the pages out on the floor of my apartment, and I stared until dawn bled through the blinds. My family had branded me the ugly duckling. But this was worse. This was proof that I had never been family at all. And yet something in me didn't break. Something in me sharpened, like a blade pulled slowly from fire. Because if they wanted me to be the joke, maybe it was time to rewrite the punchline. The next day, I went to Mara's studio. And what I found there made me question everything, even myself. By the time I reached Mara's studio, my body was still humming from the folder. The photos. The words. The proof. It felt like poison and medicine at the same time. Her studio was in an old warehouse tucked between two crumbling buildings. The sign outside was barely visible, letters fading into rust. But inside was another world, white walls, bright lights that hummed low, steady. Canvases leaned against every surface. Photos pinned like evidence boards, faces, angles, fragments of stories frozen in time. It smelled of ink and chemicals, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. Mara appeared from behind a divider. Hair pulled back, sleeves rolled, a cigarette tucked behind her ear. She moved like a storm that had decided to stand upright. "You came," she said simply, as if she'd expected me all along. I didn't answer. My throat was still dust. She gestured at a chair in the center of the room. Not a soft one. Metal, cold, the kind you'd find in interrogation rooms. "Sit." Something in her tone made me obey. She circled me once, twice. Her boots clicked against the concrete floor. "You've got the kind of face people remember," she murmured. "Not because it's perfect, because it's real. Real scares people." Her words cut deeper than she knew. I thought of the folder waiting in my apartment, the cruel group chats, my family's voices in text form. Born wrong. Never get married. Why me? I whispered. Mara stopped in front of me. For the first time, her eyes softened. "Because the world's full of plastic. And you're stone. You've been carved by fire. I can see it." "Don't waste it," she snapped her fingers. An assistant I hadn't noticed before stepped forward. A girl younger than me, dressed in all black, carrying a camera like a weapon. "Photo session," Mara ordered. My heart punched against my ribs. "No, I don't do that. I can't." "You can," Mara cut in. "And you will." The camera clicked. Flash, flash. Each one was a blade slicing away my excuses. I tried to look down. She tilted my chin up with 2 fingers. "Stop hiding," she said. "Ugly duckling? No, look at me. You're not ugly. You're unfinished." The word hit like thunder. Unfinished. Not ruined. Not hopeless. Unfinished. For the first time in years, I felt the ground shift under my feet, not because I was falling, but because maybe, just maybe, I was standing up. When the session ended, Mara studied the shots on the screen. Her lips curved. Not into a smile exactly, but into something close. "See?" she said, turning the screen to me. I saw myself. Not the girl my family laughed at. Not the duckling at the end of the table. Someone sharper. Someone with shadows and fire in her eyes. I barely recognized her. "That's not me," I whispered. "It is," Mara replied. "You just don't know her yet." I left the studio trembling. Not from fear, from something hotter. Something alive. But as I stepped into the street, phone buzzing in my pocket, my stomach dropped. The same unknown number. Another message: "You shouldn't trust her. She's not who she says she is." I froze in the middle of the sidewalk. Cars hissed by. People brushed past me indifferent, and then a second message came. This one with an attachment. A photo, Mara, standing in a dark room, talking to the man with the beat-up sedan. My blood went cold. So who was lying to me? Mara, the man at midnight? Or both? I stared at the photo until my eyes burned. Mara, the man in the sedan. Together, the woman who told me I was unfinished. The man who handed me my family's cruelty in black and white, linked. The city noise around me dulled. Like my ears had gone underwater. My pulse was the only sound left, thick, brutal hammering against my skin. "Why?" I whispered. To no one. To everyone. The unknown number buzzed again. This time, "You want answers? Don't go back to her." I wanted to throw the phone into traffic. Instead, I slid it into my pocket and walked. Fast. Nowhere. Everywhere. My reflection chased me in every shop window, hood low, eyes frantic, shoulders tight. By the time I reached my apartment, the city had swallowed midnight whole. I locked the door, bolted it, shoved a chair beneath the handle. My place smelled faintly of dust and leftover coffee. The folder still sat on the floor where I'd left it. I kicked it aside. I couldn't look at those photos anymore. Not tonight. Instead, I pulled out my laptop, searched Mara's name, her studio, her past work. The internet gave me 1,000 shards. Interviews where she called herself a collector of truth. Portfolios filled with raw portraits of people who looked broken but powerful. Clients who praised her for capturing the soul. But then, an old forum thread buried deep, half dead. A warning: watch out for her. She finds people at their lowest. Promises transformation. But she doesn't fix you. She uses you. Chews up your pain and turns it into art. My throat locked. I clicked out. Slammed the laptop shut. The room felt smaller. The walls leaned in. My phone buzzed again. "Same number. Now you see it. She'll destroy you if you let her." And then, another message, seconds later. "But I can help you destroy them instead. Them, my family. The ones who had laughed. The ones who had branded me the ugly duckling like it was gospel." My chest twisted. For years I had swallowed their cruelty. For years I had tried to shrink myself small enough to fit their love. And now here was someone offering me fire. But fire burns everything it touches. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I went to the mirror. For the first time in my life, I didn't study my flaws. I studied my eyes. Red, rimmed, alive, unfinished. Like Mara said, I pressed my palms to the glass. "Who are you becoming?" I asked the reflection, and for the first time, the silence didn't scare me. I went to bed at dawn. My dreams were jagged. Shadows whispering. Cameras flashing. My family's laughter looping, only this time it wasn't laughter, it was applause. Mocking applause that shook the walls. When I woke, there was a note slipped under my door. No stamp, no handwriting I recognized. Just one line typed on a printer, "Tonight." One choice. Studio or street, my stomach dropped. 2 doors. 2 wolves. One waiting with cameras, one waiting with folders of secrets. And me, caught in between bleeding possibility. I thought I'd make the choice myself. But when night fell, I learned the choice had already been made for me. I told myself I'd decide. Studio or street, Mara or the man in the sedan, the camera or the folder. But when the night came, I realized the decision wasn't mine anymore. It started with the knocking. 3 sharp raps on my door. Not frantic. Not polite. The kind that meant, "We already know you're inside." I froze, phone in hand. Didn't breathe. Didn't move. The knock came again, heavier this time. My lock rattled against the frame, and then a voice. Not Mara's, not the man's. A new one. Low. Controlled. I know you're awake. Open the door or I open it for you. My heart went feral. I backed away, step by step, until my calves hit the couch. Another knock. Louder. The kind that doesn't wait for permission. I thought of the folder on the floor, the photo on my phone, the words studio or street. And then, without thinking, I shouted, "Who sent you?" Silence. And then, almost amused, both. My blood iced over. Before I could process it, the door handle turned. The lock gave. The chair skidded. And he stepped inside. Not Mara. Not the sedan man. Someone else entirely. Tall, clean-cut, suit too sharp for midnight. A stranger. But his eyes carried both of their shadows. Like he'd been in the room with them. Like he'd orchestrated the whole game. He looked around my tiny apartment with distaste, like he was cataloging the poverty of my life. Then his gaze landed on me, still clutching the phone, still shaking. "You've caused a stir?" he said. Calm. Smooth. As if this was just business. "What do you mean?" I forced out. He smiled. But it wasn't warmth. It was a knife hidden behind lips. Mara sees potential. The man sees revenge. Me? He spread his hands like a dealer laying cards. I see opportunity. And you're at the center of it. I shook my head. "I don't understand." He stepped closer, every inch of him controlled, precise. "You've been tested, humiliated, undervalued. Good. That breaks most people. But you—" His eyes narrowed, studying me the way Mara had, the way predators study prey. "You didn't break. You sharpened. They think they can use you for their ends. But what if I told you you could use them?" The words hit me like static. Use them, Mara with her camera. The man with his folder. The family with their knives at dinner. For years I had been the punchline. What if I turned the joke around? But even as the thought burned inside me, I forced myself to ask, why me? Why now? The stranger leaned in, so close I could see the reflection of my trembling face in his pupils. Because ugly ducklings don't stay ugly, and you're about to find out why they hate you so much. Hate. That word twisted something deeper than ugly ever had. Before I could respond, he slid a card onto my coffee table. Different from the others, heavier, embossed, no name, just a time and place, tomorrow, midnight, the warehouse. Then he turned and left, as easily as if he owned the building. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood there shaking, staring at the card. The warehouse. A new door. And this one wasn't asking. I looked at myself in the black mirror of my TV screen. My reflection was distorted, stretched, inhuman. And the question that crawled up my throat was worse than any I'd asked before. What if they don't just want to use me? What if they want to turn me into something else entirely? The next night, I walked into that warehouse, and what I saw waiting for me there was nothing like I had imagined. The warehouse smelled of rust, oil, and dust thick enough to choke. Its metal ribs groaned in the midnight wind, like the whole structure resented being awake at this hour. I stood at the entrance with the card in my hand. No guards, no lock. No one watching. Just a door cracked open like a grin. Inside, a single bulb swung from a chain. Its light carved a trembling circle on the concrete floor, and in that circle, 3 chairs. Occupied. Mara, the man from the sedan, and the stranger who had come to my apartment. They didn't look at each other. Didn't speak. Their eyes were all on me. I stepped inside, my footsteps too loud in the hollow space. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but the door behind me creaked shut with finality. The stranger spoke first. "Good, you came. That means you've chosen," I swallowed. My throat was dry. "Chosen what?" Mara leaned forward, her eyes glittering. "To stop being their joke." The man in the sedan smirked. "To stop running." The stranger folded his hands, precise as a priest. "To become what you were always meant to be." The words hung in the air like smoke, poisoning me with possibility. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but my tongue was heavy, my heart heavier. Finally, I forced out, "Why me?" Mara answered. She reached into her bag and slid a photograph across the floor. It skidded until it stopped at my feet. I looked down. It was me. But not the me I knew. This version was confident, sharp, dangerous. My face wasn't broken by sneers or hesitation. It was lit by something darker, something powerful. I didn't remember this picture. I didn't remember being this person. My stomach turned. "When was this taken?" Mara smiled. "It hasn't been. Not yet." The man in the sedan leaned back, his grin wider. "See, kid, you thought you were the punchline, but you're the setup." "And the punchline? That's still coming." I shook my head, backing away from the photo. This is insane." The stranger rose smoothly from his chair, every movement deliberate. "Not insane. I told you, they hate you for a reason. Families don't spit venom without cause. The world doesn't mock without instinct. Ugly, they called you, ugly." His voice dropped, low and sharp. "But what if ugly isn't weakness? What if ugly is power?" The bulb above us flickered. The shadows on the walls shifted, lengthened, as though the warehouse itself leaned closer to listen. And then Mara said, almost whispering, "Show us." My skin went cold. "What do you mean?" The sedan man chuckled. "Don't play dumb. It's why you're here." The stranger's eyes locked onto mine. "Do it." Something in my chest pulsed, hard, wrong, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. And then the photo at my feet began to curl at the edges, as if touched by heat. Only there was no fire. Just me. I realized too late that they hadn't lured me here to recruit me. They'd lured me here to wake me up. The photo curled tighter. Edges blackened. The image of me, the confident, dangerous me, glowed faintly in the dim light. I stumbled back, heart hammering, air ripping in and out of my chest. This wasn't possible. Paper doesn't burn without fire. But it was burning. And I was the only thing in the room close enough to cause it. What did you do?" My voice cracked. Mara tilted her head, that eerie, calm smile never faltering. "We didn't do anything." The man in the sedan clapped his hands slowly, mockingly. "You did." I shook my head. No, I didn't. But my palms were tingling, hot, alive. The stranger stepped closer, his presence suffocating. "You think all those years of cruelty were coincidence? That their instincts were wrong?" His words dug under my skin, cutting deeper than knives. "You are different," he whispered. "Not less. Never less. But dangerous. Too much for them to name. Too much for them to control." The bulb above us popped, shattering glass onto the floor. Darkness swallowed the warehouse except for one thing. My hands. Glowing faintly. Orange veins of light webbed beneath my skin, pulsing like magma under rock. I gasped, clutching at my wrists, but the glow only brightened. "Stop it! Make it stop!" I shouted. Mara's voice floated through the dark. "Why would you want to stop?" The man in the sedan laughed, low and cruel. "That's the sound of chains breaking." I could feel the heat building, rising up my arms, filling my chest. It hurt. Oh God, it hurt. But it also thrilled. A rush so violent it stole my breath, making me dizzy, drunk on something terrifying. And then it happened. The photo on the floor didn't just burn. It disintegrated. Ash spiraled upward, hanging in the air like black snow. And in that ash, for just a second, I swore I saw her. The other me. The confident one. The sharp one. She smiled, and then she was gone. The warehouse fell silent. Only my ragged breathing remained. I dropped to my knees, shaking, clutching at my hands as the glow slowly faded. The stranger's footsteps echoed as he approached. He crouched down, close enough that I could see the hunger in his eyes. "There," he murmured. "Now you understand." I stared at him, chest heaving. "What am I?" He smiled, small and terrifying. You're what comes after the ugly duckling. Mara leaned forward in her chair, her voice sharp as a blade. Now tell us, are you ready to show them what you've become? My mouth opened, but no words came, because deep down, beneath the fear, a flicker of something new stirred. Not hope, not relief. Something darker. The thought of walking back into that dining room one day and watching their laughter die in their throats. But what none of us knew that night was how quickly the line between power and ruin would blur, and how easily I could lose myself to it. The first time it happened by accident. The second time, I let it happen on purpose. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment in the warehouse. The glow under my skin, the photo turning to ash, the way their eyes lit up not with disgust, but with recognition. For once in my life, people weren't laughing at me. They were afraid of me, and I wanted more. Mara called it the fire. She said it lived inside me, waiting. The stranger said it wasn't a curse, it was a gift. The man in the sedan just smirked and told me, "Feed it," so I did. Every night they brought me back to the warehouse. The place became my crucible. Concrete floors littered with scorch marks, walls groaning with heat when I lost control. At first, it was small. A flicker in my palms. A ripple of heat in the air. A glow, faint and nervous. But the more I gave into it, the stronger it grew. Soon I could set fire to scraps of paper without touching them. I could warm the air around me until the metal beams in the ceiling hissed. Once, in a moment of panic, the stranger's sleeve caught fire just from being too close, and when that happened, instead of scolding me, he smiled. "You're learning." But there was something they didn't warn me about. The hunger. Because the fire didn't just want to be used, it wanted to consume. The more I fed it, the more it demanded. I would walk home from those late-night sessions and feel it thrumming in my veins, restless. Street lamps flickered as I passed. My reflection in dark windows seemed different, sharper, crueler. And when I thought of my family, their smirks, their cruel jokes, my mother's sigh, the fire pulsed hotter. It wanted them. One night Mara tested me. She tossed me a photograph across the floor. This one wasn't of me. It was of my cousin, the one who had started it all, the first to call me ugly duckling. "Burn it," she said. My throat tightened. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was a symbol, a challenge. The fire inside me leapt, begging, screaming. My hands shook. I can't, I whispered. The man in the sedan scoffed. "Then you're nothing but the joke they said you were." Anger roared in my chest, colliding with shame, colliding with that insatiable hunger. I clenched my fists. The photo smoldered. Black veins spread across the image, and then, ashes, gone, silence. Mara's lips curved into a smile. The stranger whispered, almost reverent, "Yes, but me." I felt hollow, because it wasn't just a photo. It was the first real step toward something I wasn't sure I could ever come back from. That night, when I got home, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. My face glowed faintly in the dark, light seeping from the cracks under my skin. And I whispered to my reflection, "Who am I becoming?" The mirror didn't answer, but the fire in my chest did. It burned. And the next morning, I got the call, an invitation back to the family dinner table, the same table where it all began. The call came at 9:03 a.m. I hadn't even finished pouring my coffee. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. My mother, for a second. I just stared at it, my thumb hovering, the fire under my skin humming like it knew something was about to break. I answered. Her voice was calm, clipped like nothing had ever happened. "We're having dinner tonight. Everyone will be there. Your cousins, your uncles, even your grandmother. We expect you to come. No apology. No explanation. Just expectation. The same expectation that had caged me my entire life." I could hear the clatter of dishes in the background, the faint hum of conversation. It was all so ordinary. But my heart? It slammed against my ribs like a drum of war. "I don't know," I said carefully. She sighed. The same tired sigh from that night. The one that carved me in half. You always make things difficult. Just try not to embarrass yourself. Embarrass myself. The word seared, I almost laughed. If only she knew what I was now. I hung up without another word. The warehouse crew met me that afternoon. Mara's eyes gleamed like she had been waiting for this. The stranger adjusted his cuffs. The man in the sedan leaned against the wall, smirking. They invited you back, Mara said. Perfect, my jaw tightened. Perfect for what? The stranger stepped closer. Perfect for a performance. They branded you the ugly duckling. Now you return as the firebird. Let them see what they created. The man in the sedan chuckled. Time to roast some family. His laugh echoed, too sharp, too amused. But the fire inside me roared in agreement. For the first time, I didn't feel fear about going back. I felt anticipation. I spent the afternoon preparing. Not my clothes, not my makeup, not my hair. None of that mattered anymore. I prepared myself. I stared in the mirror, watching the faint glow ripple beneath my skin like a living thing. I practiced breathing it in, pulling it back, hiding it under the surface. I imagined walking into that dining room, quiet, unnoticed, until I chose otherwise. Every cruel laugh, every whispered insult replayed in my mind. Fuel. Every sigh, every look of disappointment. Fuel. By the time the sun dipped low, I could feel the fire trembling under my ribs, begging for release. I wasn't sure if I could control it, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't leave that table the same way I had before. The car ride over felt like stepping into another life. Streetlights blurred past the window. My reflection in the glass didn't look like me anymore. The timid girl who used to shrink at their words, she was gone. By the time the house came into view, my hands were trembling. Not from fear, from hunger. I pushed open the door. The smell hit me first. Roast chicken, garlic butter, fresh bread. The same smells from the night they broke me. Voices floated from the dining room. Laughter, plates clinking. All so familiar it made my chest ache. I stepped inside. Every conversation stopped. A dozen eyes turned to me. Some widened in surprise. Some narrowed in judgment. And my mother's lips curled into the faintest, brittle smile. You came, she said, as if it were nothing. As if I hadn't bled for this moment. I pulled out a chair. The same chair I had sat in before. The ugly duckling's chair, but tonight, I wasn't here to eat. I was here to burn. And as my cousin leaned back with that same smirk, opening his mouth to speak, I felt the fire finally break free. His mouth opened. The same smirk. The same tone like he owned the room. Ugly duckling, he said, slow, savoring the word as if it were dessert. My hands were under the table, hidden, calm. I could feel the fire humming at the edges of my bones, small, patient, waiting for permission. Permission was the one thing they'd always given me. Permission to be small. Permission to accept their jokes, their sighs, their verdicts. Not tonight. I slid my hands out. They glowed. Not like a threat. Like a lantern finally lit from the inside. Warmth washed over me, safe, fierce. It steadied my breath. It steadied my hands. Nobody at the table moved. The room held its breath the way an ocean holds its tide before a storm. My cousin laughed again, louder. Look at her. What's wrong with you? I stood up. The chair scraped, a broken sound. I didn't sound like the girl who had fled that night months ago. My voice was low, close to a whisper and impossible to ignore. Everything's wrong with you, I said. They blinked. Surprise flickered across their faces. My mother's smile thinned to a tight wire. I stepped forward. Not to argue, not to beg. To show. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. The one they thought only they owned. The screenshots, the group chats, the proof of every private insult baptized as casual conversation. I dropped it on the table. The pages fanned like a deck of cards. Phones lifted. Heads turned. Eyes devoured the words they had written when they thought no one was watching. Voices rose. Petty explanations. Awkward chuckles. Denials that had nowhere to go. I let them scramble. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I didn't cry. I watched. Then I did something they didn't expect. I touched a page. The ink smoked. Not because of heat, but because something in me wanted the truth to be seen. The paper glowed silver for a breath. The photos on the sheet changed, projected like light onto the wall behind them. Every private message, every comment, every cruel screenshot enlarged and hung above their heads like a mirror. They looked up and saw themselves. My cousin reached for the edge of the table. He wanted to take the papers away, to hide, to laugh them off. His fingers trembled. It was a joke, he stammered, though the words had no weight now. The wall behind him repeated his messages in stark, unforgiving light. She'll never get married. Born wrong. My mother's face went pale. That thin smile snapped like glass. I didn't need to say how I'd felt. The words across the wall said it for me. The air was loud with the sound of their own cruelty echoing back at them. But revelation is only the beginning. I raised both hands. The glow traced patterns in the table's wood grain. It didn't burn the table. It didn't need to. What it did was purer. It illuminated. Photos of me not as a joke, but as an image of creation, raw, fierce, flickered into life on the wall. My Mara photos. The ones the studio had captured. The faces of me I hadn't yet known. Their faces changed too. Confusion, then a sour interest. The cousin's jaw clenched. Someone muttered about attention-seeking. I let them mutter. I wanted them to watch me. Because watching is closer to understanding than laughing ever could be. You called me ugly, I said, my voice steady now. You made jokes. You took pictures like I'm a specimen. You treated me like a lesson. Silence again. Heavy. I'm not your lesson, I continued. I'm an answer. The room shuddered. Not literally. Not with earthquakes. But something moved. Walls I had built inside myself shifted. Shame loosened. The air tasted like possibility. Then came the hardest part. I could have used the fire to break them. To scorch their plates, to turn polished cutlery into molten spoons. The warehouse taught me destruction like an art. It taught me that I could make things end. Instead, I turned the heat inward. I pulled from the fire, not violence, but light. I heated the edges of their confession into warmth that burned away excuses. I used the power to force them to see themselves honestly, not as perpetrators to be punished, but as people who would have to live with what they said. My grandmother started to cry. Not loud, quiet, broken sounds. My uncle's voice shook when he tried to explain. My cousin's bravado drained like water from a bucket. It didn't fix everything. Forgiveness isn't a switch, but it started something. After everyone left, some apologizing, some angry, some silent, I sat alone at the table. The plates cooled. The candles guttered. Mara's text buzzed. You did it. Simple, flat, proud. The stranger's message followed. Now you have a choice. I thought back to the warehouse. The training, the hunger, the way the fire licked at the edges of my soul. I thought about how easy it would have been to consume them, to vanish behind flames that erased futures. I thought about the version of me who delighted in being feared, and then I looked at the mirror over the mantel. My face reflected a woman who had been broken, then sharpened, then tempered. Power had arrived in me like a storm. It could burn or it could light. I would decide. I walked outside. The night was cool, breathing around me like a living thing. I held my hands out. The glow dimpled under my skin and then faded, not gone. Waiting. I thought about everything I had lost to their words. I thought about everything I'd gained by refusing to stay small. I didn't need to be cruel to be powerful. I didn't need to destroy to be seen, so I stepped forward. I built a life where they could no longer write the story for me. I worked. I healed. I used the fire to create. Photos, art, truth. I let the world see the raw, unfinished person I had been told to hide. And in the exposing, I found luminous things, friends who stayed, work that fed me, a mirror that finally reflected someone I could love. Months later, my cousin called. He said words that were almost apology. He asked a question about my work. I answered firm. I didn't need the closure he wanted. I'd found my own. At a gallery showing, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You made me feel possible." That was the moment I knew I hadn't lost myself to the fire. I had learned how to warm without burning others. I had learned how to be visible without being violent. And if I'm honest, I won't lie. I still feel the hunger sometimes. The easy rage that would like to swallow the world whole. It's there. It requires work. It requires choice. A daily choosing to be creation instead of destruction. So I ask you, because this isn't just my story anymore. It's a question about what we do when we're pushed into being someone else. What would you have done in my situation? Tell me in the comments.